Welcome to Bottle Rocket with Elena Sucheva, your top hockey podcast. Welcome back to Bottle Rocket. I'm Elena, and as always, I'm joined by my co-hosts Stan Fischler and Jerry Hack, and we have a very special guest with us, two-time Stanley Cup champion, one of the most honest voices in the game, Bobby Holík. Bobby, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's great to see you, great meeting you, great seeing Stan, and looking forward to.
Bobby, if you had to redo the whole journey of leaving Czech and coming over here, would you do anything differently looking back?
Ironically, I just thought about it. Reflecting, and we just got back Monday night from there. My mom's 80th birthday party, so we went over quickly. I got to see. I'll get back to your question, but you're talking about Czech. I just came back on Monday. I got to see 3 or 4 hockey games, 2 of them professional. My nephew's playing, kids, 13-year-old kids. It was an amazing trip. My mom's birthday party. But back to your question, would I do anything differently? No, because I look at it the way I look at it that not everything went just right, but that's life. And what makes life or what makes success, what makes the most fulfilling is when things are not according to your plan, but you adapt and you still persevere. And I learned so much, and it has been an amazing journey. And there's a lot of things you can do better, but you don't know that at the time. The most important thing that I look back as a professional, uh, as a hockey player, is did I give my best every single time I step on the ice or I tie my shoes to work out or compete or whatever. And I can honestly say that. So yeah, things knowing what I know now, things could be different or do differently. But at the time, all that matters was giving my best, and I can honestly say that, and that's one of the proudest things of my career.
When you came over, what was the biggest challenge adjusting to NHL life and life in America? What were the 2 big challenges?
So I played professionally at the elite men's level in Czechoslovakia for 3 years prior to coming here. So I was used to men's game or playing against men. Of course, the smaller range, especially the old Boston Garden, which was very tiny. And I did have a hard when we went there first time with Hartford. The players, my teammates said, it's really small. There's no corners. I said, how small can it be? I don't know if I said it out loud or to myself. And well, and you get on the ice, you skating down the middle, you take a shot, and initially people just kind of circle in their own end to warm up the initial stuff. And as I turned away from the net, I ran into boards because I really had my space awareness was good, but the build or the ring was too small or small. So that was my, again, you're talking about would you do differently? I immediately told the teammates, how small can it be? And on my first 20 seconds on the ice in Boston, I ran into the boards because I didn't realize it was that small. But to make adjustment, as I said, I played for the national team. I played with men, and at the time there was hardly any Czech players or Czechoslovakian players here because we couldn't leave freely. So we had the best of the best playing at that elite league, and I played against them or with them on the national team. So I was used to playing against men. It's just I think the intensity or the frequency of games in NHL. You go from twice a week to 3.5. Averages about 3.5 games a week plus the travel. And the rivals add up playing Boston or playing Montreal, and then when you get to New Jersey playing the Rangers, Flyers, Islanders, it all adds to it. But I don't think I had the biggest, not necessarily challenge, but biggest adjustment was the frequency of games and the travel.
And you played in an era that was very, very physical. Do you feel the game today is missing something from your era?
I refuse to compare eras, but yes, it was physical. What I admire about the best players in my era, they could step on the ice and be the same quality, if not better player. Like I'm talking about Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, Joe Sakic, Matt Sundin, the players I faced in the face-offs or I played against most of my career. And those players, I know they could step on the ice, and with the space and a little less grittiness because of the rules, not necessarily because players don't want to play that way, but because of the rules, they would be just as dominant, if not more dominant, than they were in their time. And that's something to be said about the players I played against or with, like Scott Niedermayer, uh, that they would have no problem adjusting to today's game. Those top players. Um, do, Doing it in reverse, if at a time machine and bring today's top players, I know one player that could really do well is McKinnon from Colorado because he can play through anything. I think he's a very good player that way. He's a top player in the league and also he brings a little bit of that what we had back then.
So Bobby, I'm a Vancouver Canucks fan, and you were drafted in 1989. That was the year that Matt Sundin was drafted first overall. He's the only player in that draft who played more games than you did. And my Vancouver Canucks, 2 picks ahead of you, picked the immortal Jason Herter, who played a grand total of 1 game in the NHL. So my theory is not only did you play your own games, but you played all of Jason Herter's games as well. So it's just, I'm wondering, where were you when you found out that you were drafted?
So going back to the draft, and I didn't think about it then. I didn't think about it for a very long time until enough time passes by, reflect. And I was the first and only. And if there's fact checkers who follow this program, I would love them to check it out. But I believe I'm the first and last player to ever be drafted in the first round on the other side of the Iron Curtain. So not only I played, me and my son played. No one else played as many games. I had to make that quote unquote journey from different worlds at the time. Things changed after the draft, a few months after. But when I was drafted, I didn't know when and how I'm gonna get here to be able to play all those games. And again, because I believe Jaromir Jagr was drafted in the first round the next year, but it was post-revolution. The Iron Curtain was down. So that's another fact that I'm proud of, that I made it to the first round from behind the Iron Curtain. But yeah, when I was at home at my parents' or our house, I it was early evening, I believe. I just got home from a big bike ride through the country, bicycle, not motorcycle, and the phone rang, and I picked it up, and somebody said, "Hey, you were just drafted 10th overall by Hartford." I said, "Great," and that was it. I hung up. I didn't even know. I don't remember who it was. I didn't know at the time who it was because it was so insignificant. Because I was still on the other side of that, literally electrified fence with border guards and guard dogs and all that, and their rifles being loaded with live ammunition. So to me, it was like, that's great. I've been drafted, but how am I going to get there? How am I going to be able to live there and play there?
How did you feel when you got traded to New Jersey, and your thoughts when you got to Lou Lamoriello's camp?
I loved the move because Hartford was great to start. It was like you're going, from a small town Czechoslovakia at the time to not so big of a city, and they were really good to me. Some players, especially some teammates, were awesome. Other ones were not. So going to New Jersey, knowing that it was a little more structure, a little more just had a bigger sound to it than Hartford. And the first year was so with the Herbie Brooks, but once they brought in Jacques Lemaire, Larry Robinson, Jacques Caron, it was a career changer. So to me, going to New Jersey was an exciting move, or a little bit of an unknown. I'm 21 years old. I get drafted. They move you like a piece of equipment. It's like, oh, we don't need this truck here anymore. We'll just ship it to New Jersey. and that's how you react. You just get moved but the opportunities were better, and our life was awesome in New Jersey. We had a great decade there, and yeah, it was. I remember that my wife and I, we were both excited because we thought that was a step up.
Looking back, what is your proudest moment in hockey?
As I said earlier, to be able to say that I gave everything I had every single day, and that doesn't mean I was great every single day. The kids today, I have worked with kids and mentor. They think that uh, when you tell them to be their best, that means they're going to always be the first or second star of the game. No, it's whatever you have that day, you give me the best you can. And sometimes it's really not that good. But if you do it consistently, you got to be consistently giving the team a good effort, and results will be there. Over the course of your career or over the course of your youth hockey playing.
What's one lesson from your NHL career that still guides you today?
Um, I really don't know if anyone. I think I had not necessarily a lesson. I learned a lot of things during in NHL, but during that decade in New Jersey. The teamwork. Maybe one thing that I would stress that I didn't realize at the time is you even though sometimes your role on the team is smaller than you would like, but team success, collective success is far more fun than success as an individual. And you see a lot of players on bad teams having great years statistically, but they don't know what they're missing. If they do something different or add more to the team or make other players better and the teams better, their collective, their team success is a lot more fun than whatever you think your individual success is.
So your first year in New Jersey was Marty Brodeur's rookie season where he won the Calder Trophy. What was he like coming in, and what did the team think of him?
I think he was exactly the same the way he was living, 10 years later or 20 years later. He was just, when he was on the ice, whether it was practice or optional or, morning skate or pregame warm up or the game, he just wanted to stop all the pucks. He just worked so hard. And so to me as a player, it was inspiring, even though he was younger, just barely younger. But still, having players like that around you, and I think it was by design by Lou, to having competitive natures like Scotty Stevens and Marty and Kenny Danico and Niedermeyers and Lemieux and I would include myself in that group. Maybe it's up to other people to do that, but we were thriving off of each other's competitiveness because our practices were just as competitive as the games, if sometimes even more. So Marty, when you think of Marty, and Hasek had the same thing, but he just completely different style. They just didn't want to let the puck pass them at any moment. It didn't matter when, and that's what makes great performers or great players, great athletes who they are. Because how I said, I felt the same way. I wasn't at that talent level, but I wanted to give my best and be my best every single time.
You mentioned one of the most important people in your life, if not the most important, your wife. How did you
Yes,
meet?
she has
How did,
some run into with you over the years. No, just kidding.
how did you meet her?
It was in
Where?
Hartford. Hartford was awesome because I met my wife there, and that's 35 years ago. So it's been an amazing ride. I separate my professional career from my personal because if your professional success means or dictates happiness or fulfillment in personal life, I think it's wrong. It should be, if anything else, the other way around, because it's more, like I was in with my brother-in-law. He retired 25 years ago. I retired 16 years ago or 17 years ago. No matter how long your career, it goes by really fast. So the professional part is separate from my personal. And we met in Hartford. She was just working for the owner's businesses, and we crossed paths. It's a small town, so you couldn't. Plus, I could not say hi, and the rest is history. Literally, is 35 years later.
You once did an interview with Maeve at MSG and gave a very candid comment about Gomez making a dumb play. Were you always that straightforward, even as a player?
I was trying to be because I learned from my dad. My dad was hardest on himself. He was a player, coach, manager for many decades in Czechoslovakian hockey, and he was very successful. Sometimes he rubbed people the wrong way because he was so straightforward. But he wasn't straightforward with others and not with himself. So I always started with myself. So to me, coming to the ring or even being away from the ring, I was trying to be the best professional I could be, and when on the ice, trying to make the best plays that can help the team. So at the time, started Gomez. He was probably very young and very fresh. So as an older player, veteran, maybe I didn't necessarily do it the smoothest way, but I called him out, and not more than once. But you know what? We are still friends. 20 something years later, we talk all the time. So um, I enjoy. I didn't necessarily like it, but I appreciate it when somebody did that to me, because you need to hear the truth. And sometimes bad organizations, one of the reasons why they're not doing well, they can't get out of the cycle, is because they keep telling each other how great they are, or it's not your fault, it's somebody else's fault. And sometimes you need to hear the truth and get better yourself, lift yourself up.
In the early 90s, I worked with a lady named Dana, and she was from Czechoslovakia. She defected when it was part of the Iron Curtain. And she would say that um, every once in a while, people in her apartment building would just disappear. Now, what was it like playing hockey behind the Iron Curtain? And maybe you could tell us the story of what happened to your grandfather's business.
Well, yeah, people disappear because those kind of regimes rule by fear, and sometimes they pick people up on the street or in their apartments just to keep that fear at a very high level. Because when people stop fearing that the regime loses its biggest leverage. So that went on, and more than anybody, my parents or grandparents experienced it. I was a kid growing up. I left as a 19-year-old, so my family did a great job sheltering me sort of from the regime. I learned more since the curtain fell down, since the revolution, about the regime than during it. And hockey was a vehicle for us, for my sister and I. Well, my sister played tennis, but for hockey for me was a vehicle to get out of that situation, to get out of that environment. Because my dad stayed, and he was a legendary player, legendary. He was extremely resentful of the system because of the regime, because they nationalized my grandfather's butcher shop. That was his dream that he worked all his life for. So my dad was very resentful, and he acted that way, and he was very outspoken. But he wanted us to know better. So he taught us as much as he could. We had English tutors, that the future is somewhere else, not knowing that the revolution will come, the revolution, and things will improve. But you have to prepare, you have to live at the time you're in. And at the time, it was very restrictive, very tyrannical, occupation by a huge superpower. I can go on and on and on, but it's more in the history books than it's for the hockey podcast.
Bobby, I've been a historian for a number of years, and all this time, I can only think of one fourth line that became famous, which was the crash line with Mike Costello, Randy McKay. And I know that you wanted to get higher, but you were also part of this great line, this line that is talked about today. If we could only have a line like the crash line, tell us about it.
Well, it was a great time because we played together for 3 years. The first year was when we went to the conference finals with the Rangers. We have a very effective line for the type of team we were, through 93, 94. Then we became even more effective. Jacques Lemaire really enjoyed our passion for team and just helping the team. And to be honest with you, at one time I had my own website, and I wrote blog, they called it, or article about unconditional teammates. And Randy McKay and Mike Caruso were the most unconditional teammates. And without them, not only I was my success, but the team. We looked at it as we were the fourth line, But as Jacques said, a lot of times we were the best line on the team, best line on the ice, and we were very physical. I really enjoy my time with the crash line, but 3 years into being on the crash line, things change, and I felt like I could give more, and then I asked for more responsibility, but I would never discount my time with the crash line because to this day, 30 years later, there's people still remember that. And I remember some games. I remember playing. There was still in Miami playing the Panthers, and Panthers pulled the goalie or wanted to pull the goalie to because we were down, we were up goal or two, and they wanted to tie it up. And Jacques Lemaire gave us an opportunity. We played in there, and the whole time they couldn't get out of the zone, and because we were so good with nowadays it's all analytics, but puck position or stay in the offensive zone, the cycle and the forecheck, and we were dominant line, even though we were not the top of so to speak, top of the line, top line. But we played our share against the Legion of Doom in '95 playoffs. We played our share against other against Mario Hens line, and when we played them in the second round in '95, like it was a lot of fun, and I definitely I cannot say enough about my right and left wing, Randy McKay and Mike Deluso, and those are the players you can learn from what it's like to be a team player.
So during the 95 playoff run starting in Boston, could you feel the momentum building early? Did the room sense something special?
Yeah, you know what? The first round, it's not necessarily um, hardest, but it's kind of you go from regular season and you got to turn it up, so it's kind of feeling out what are you really good enough to compete in the playoffs. So and it happens really quick, and we did that, and I think in the second round it was same thing in 2000. Once you get in the second round and you really roll and you have a good rhythm, and your top players are doing what they're supposed to, and Marty, he's stopping the puck, you do start sensing that you might have something, and it's what it is the feeling that it's in your hands. You're good enough to compete with anybody, but you have to do your job, every one of us, and as a team. So that it's a wonderful feeling to know that you're in charge of your own destiny, and you don't have to hope that the best team in the conference gets eliminated, so you might have a chance to get through the either conference finals or the finals.
Who were you closest with on that 95 Devils team?
I'm not sure. I was a roommate with Mike Caruso for a long time. I don't think we were roommates in playoffs, but Mike and Randy he had his own crew that he rolled with, like Claude Lemieux and these guys. But we had younger guys. I was still a younger guy, believe it or not, even though they called me the oldest young man in hockey from the time I came in because of my um, almost too much maturity for my age. But that was coming from from behind the Iron Curtain. So I know Bill Gaines there, Scott Newmeyer, all these guys. Those are my peers. And Marty was still young, but you can't say that there was cliques or groups. We were just that was the best team I've ever played for or on. So it's hard to say who you were close because we were all close. It was actually reflecting. It was actually very incredible how team oriented and how everybody put the team first.
I want to ask you something very specific about the beginning of the first round that led to the first cup. You're going to be playing Boston. Bruce Driver told me that things were not that good with the team until the last practice before that series began in Boston. He said suddenly everything clicked. Everything in that practice worked out, and from that point on, that was the springboard, because I covered that series, and I remember we were worried about Boston, and that was it. That practice turned everything around. You remember that?
I remember, maybe not in those exact words, but what I remember is we went to the conference finals in the year before with the Rangers, and we learned a lot from the loss. And so it was almost like we didn't play the regular season just half gas. We just knew that we need to be great when it really matters because we were great the year before. We had second or third most goals for, and we had incredible numbers during the regular season. we came up short, losing in the seventh game of the conference finals to one of the most classic series or games ever, which I'm also very proud of. So that was like, oh, subconsciously we were maybe just thinking we will. Maybe that was a chance. You always need to be on top of your game. But we were like, we will be great when it matters, and we were because we just felt it. We learned a lot the year before. Maybe that's similar to what Bruce Driver was feeling or seeing.
So you win the cup again in 2000. How did that team compare to the 95 group? Did one feel stronger than the other?
Well, there's no stronger team than '95. I will never. There's nothing came close. 2000 was more talented. We were not necessarily deeper, but just more talent and different players. And but we still had enough players from the '95 that kept it. We kept everybody on the right track mentally because you got to have everybody's got to have their mind in the right place. The body will follow. The hands will be there. The skills, the shots, the physicality will be there, but mindset has to be in the right place. And as talented as we were still obviously dominant team in that 2000 playoff. So I think it helped to have guys from '95 where we wanted strictly with the effort and the grit and the togetherness. So we brought it along into the 2000 and what it meant in 2000 that when you win once, people sometimes say, it was a fluke or you were lucky. Well, there's no such a thing in the hockey playoffs as luck. You have to earn it. But it was kind of a confirmation that we belong as champions.
In 94, you guys suffered an absolutely devastating loss in the semifinals, the famous Mato goal. Um, did you guys use that for motivation in the following year? Because that would crush most teams.
Motivation, but mostly learning lessons. We learn lessons from it. And you know what? Mato is a lot easier to hear or talk about than in 2001 losing Colorado in Game 7 for some reason. Because I believe 94 was not our year, and 2001 almost was, but again, we came up short. And that one is harder to take than the '94 one.
The final series with Detroit in '95, I'll never forget it. Before the series started, the NHL had a luncheon, and the Red Wings were there. Scotty Bowman, the coach, and you guys were there, and they let the Detroit people answer the questions first. They had a dais, great players on the dais, and then they had tables, and then when it was over, the Red Wings part was over, half the writers walked out. It was an insult to the Devils. In fact, there was one writer from Toronto said the Red Wings are going to win the series in 3 games. You guys were such tremendous underdogs, and the great Scotty Bowman. How did you wind up beating them? 4 straight, 4 straight.
Yeah, it's what I still a team, better team. They had better players. When you matched up the players, the top center against top center and a top D against top D goalie. Maybe we had a better goalie, but it was just a strictly matter of who wants it back more as a team. And you know what? We learned the year before with the the conference final against the Rangers, and they learned from that series because they became pretty successful afterwards. Sometimes you need that. You need no matter how hard you practice, no matter how good your coach is. Sometimes you need a loss and setback to really learn. And we all, and credit to the Red Wings and credit to us. We learned from our setback and loss, and they learned from theirs because it was almost humiliating the way we just dominated them physically and anyway. But it started with the physicality, and it was just. I remember that we were controlling the play pretty much. What is it? 4 times 60. That's 240 minutes of the play.
Beating Dallas in 6, lifting the cup in their building, and playing in front of Marty Brodeur. What made Marty Marty? What separated him from other goalies?
We talked about earlier. It was him not ever, whether it was optional, whether it was just a practice, whether it was a Stanley Cup Finals, or I've seen it in him in Olympic games. He just didn't want to let the puck in or pass him. He was so competitive and doing his best. I mean, people say, "Oh, yeah, he was so talented, this and that," but you know what? That's all great. There's a lot of talented goalies. There's a lot of goalies who have even better style, but no one had a competitive fire like that. If him and Patrick Roy or Waugh, uh, their competitive fire, it was just put them at the top on their own. From my memory, Stan remembers a lot more goalies, probably from the different eras. But to me, Patrick Waugh, Matt Marty, and Hasek, I was very fortunate to play in the era when I had three goalies like that who were just incredible. Again, when you look at their video, and if nobody knew their statistic, they'll be like, yeah, they were good. But man, when you realize the competitiveness, the fire, and sometimes the meanness in them, like they were not scared, from what I understand. I played with Hasek a little bit in Czechoslovakia for the national team, so I knew him a little bit. Marty and Patrick Roy, they weren't scared to say what was on their mind and what needed to be said. Again, we all have to be honest with ourselves. We want to take it all the way.
I always said that if I had to pick a goalie to win one game to save my life, that goalie would be Dominic Hasek, and Brodeur would be the backup. So, how good was he? Like, nobody can copy his style because he didn't have a style. He just seemed to be a freak of nature. Like, how good was he in practice? How hard was he to beat in practice?
Very hard. It was a He challenged the players or the shooters. Like we can go on. It's the same thing over and over. It's a work ethic. It's a discipline. It's everything that you can control. These players control, and it's not just the top three goalies of my era. It's the top players of my era, or it's top players of any era. It's top performers in anything. What you can control: being on time, putting in the work, discipline, lifestyle, commitment, all that we can control. So, now when I see in youth sports, I see all these trainers and instructors and teaching the kids. I can't even tell what they're teaching them, but they forget all the things that matter most. It's the heart, it's the mind, it's the commitment, it's the discipline. It's great to be talented, but as Stan has witnessed over the last almost century, there's a lot of talented first round players who never made it or played few games. And then there's players who work very, very hard every single day and became legendary. We can talk about it all we want, but it's the same thing over and over and over again. It never changes. Discipline, commitment, mindset, work ethic. I mean, that's what it is.
What made Jacques Lemaire such a great coach?
I think what made him a great player or made him a great coach, he was very cerebral. He was not necessarily the biggest, strongest, fastest, because I actually enjoy watching some of the Montreal Canadian games when he played. And they played exactly the way we played, kind of the system and relying on players and the way they had structured the team with certain lines doing certain different jobs, quote unquote jobs. And but I think he was a lot smarter than people realize as a player and as a coach. I've learned so much from him that most of my youth coaching and mentoring career, what I've learned was, of course, from my dad and a couple of mentors in Czechoslovakia growing up. But the bulk of it, the core, is Jacques Lemaire and Larry Robinson.
You were involved with hockey in Israel. How did that come about, and what was your role?
It came about. This guy Maven, I think is his nickname. I'm not sure. We were talking when I was still playing how much how much we like Israel, how much and obviously, and we talked about Israel hockey even after I retired. And then I got an email from Stan. He said, "Hey, do you want to go to do hockey school in Israel?" I said, "Absolutely." So he connected me with people in Israel. I went there one summer. I went there the next summer. It was so much fun. So much fun. The country is amazing. The land of Israel is amazing. The people are, I can't say enough. It was a life changing experience, and I'm grateful that Stan, facilitated for me. And then eventually they enjoy having me so much, they asked me to coach their national team. So I did U18, U20s, the men's team, and travel around the world with them. And again, it was great experience. And it's when you look at the hockey part, it's not what people would think, but there's far more to it than hockey. And especially when you're working with 18-year-olds or less, or 20-year-olds or less, it's just tremendous pride. And to me, it was something that added to my hockey career or hockey experiences so much that I'm still trying to get back there. Then COVID came, then the war came. It's been kind of they have to figure it out, but I'm working hard at trying to get back to it because it was something that I really appreciate. I appreciate Stan's effort to introduce me to that, and I'll never forget it.
How do you make officiating better than it is, or is that possible? There's always complaints going back. I don't since I was in diapers, people were complaining about the officiating. Is there any way to make it better than it is right now?
I think it's not as bad as it could be. They're people, and one thing is also the constant adjusting of the rules. Like we had the rules for a long time, and everybody got used to it. When I coach high school hockey, I said, just give us the rules. What are the rules? This way we can play within the rules. Hockey players are smart, or at least they're smart as far as the game goes. So when we know what our boundaries or what the rules are, we can play within it. But when it's constantly changing, and this referee thinks that should be called, and this referee thinks that shouldn't be called, and it's year after year after year, especially in youth hockey, is it's very difficult to find, not perfection. I'm not asking for perfection. There's no such a thing, but consistency. And so I think it could be a lot worse. I think I've watched last, 3 playoffs, last 3 years of NHL playoffs. I think the officiating was very good because we almost have a very low expectation, but we shouldn't because they're people. And you know what? I played and I had a really, really tough relationship with all the officials in the league because the type of players I was, the type of game I played, and all that. So I had a really difficult. But then afterwards, actually, in Scott Gomez fundraiser up in Alaska, I met some of them, and we were talking. And it's a difficult, tough job. Nobody's ever going to be happy, so they have to call it. Give them opportunity to be more consistent by being consistent with the rules. And I think, as I said, I can only judge last 3 playoffs. What was it, 23, 24, 25 NHL playoffs, and I thought I was very, very happy with the officiating.
Stan, I think you once mentioned someone telling you that officials hope the calls even out by the end. Something along those lines, right?
Jack Capuano, I asked Jack when he was coaching the Islanders after a very, very bad game in terms of they felt the refs were unfair to them. I said, Jack, what's your comment on the officiating? And he said, I hope in the end it all evens out. That's what he said. I always like that.
And usually it does. And you know, you guys are experts. You can make those comments, but if I ever was a coach, even as a player, as maybe worked up, let's put it that way, while I was with officiating, it really doesn't make a difference in the game. If you lose a game or you're a playoff series because of one call, then you are not good enough to win. If you're good enough to win, you win no matter what. You overcome being on the road more, having 4 games out of 7 on the road. You overcome bad officiating. There's no such a thing. I've never seen in my life that the team lost playoff series because of bad officiating. But for you guys experts, please go ahead talk about it. But me as a player, and actually when I was on the ice, if we lost a game because of that was a good indicator we were not good enough to win.
So after your days in New Jersey, you signed as a free agent with the Rangers. After signing with the Rangers, what was it like going back to New Jersey the first time?
Not great. It was odd. It was unfortunately I wanted to stay in New Jersey. Didn't work out. No problem. Life is pro sports. That's what it is. And I wasn't fortunate to get any big offers throughout early part of my career. You know, I was 12 years in, two-time Stanley Cup champion, All-Star, whatever. I'm like, you know what? I should get compensated soon because I'm going to run out of time. So when the Rangers came, it was a not necessarily the amount, but it was structured the way I wanted. So, and going, it's a good question. Going back to New Jersey was not great because I had so many great memories being across town, across River Rival. But you know what? You do what you can, and so yeah, that was great.
What went into the decision to leave the Devils?
As I said, though, you know, I had few teams offering close to the same amount of money, but it was the structuring of the contract that I favored from the Rangers, and they provided us, the family, for not necessarily have to move across the country or different, you know, going to Toronto or something. So there was a lot of good things about it, and I believe, even though I was told otherwise, I believe we could make the team better, but we didn't.
You are known as a two-way force. Which current NHL player reminds you the most of your style?
To be honest with you, I haven't watched this year any games this year. I watched playoffs last year and the year before. I would have to really think about that a lot. I don't know. Is there those type of players who, you know, two-way players, physical? I don't know. I'm like we talked about earlier in the show. The physicality is different. It's not as much part of the game, so it's hard to relate or find a player that you could relate to because they're not as physical. And you know how many players who are physical can still put up numbers. You know, like I wasn't a I was on a hot streak or anything, but I still could put up some offensive numbers. It's pretty, like half of my career, I think that was pretty good. So um, I don't know if today's game doesn't necessarily call for the type of players I want.
If you were building a top-winning team in 2025, what's the first thing you'd prioritize?
Well, if I could, it would be goalie, defenseman, and not necessarily the most talented ones, but the most solid. That they give you high-end performance consistently. You know, you look at Devils. It was Brodeur, Stevens, and then we had the forwards were Claude or eventually I kind of rolled into their role. That you knew what you're gonna get from these players. They will pull the team. With Marty and Ned, and again, Marty is an outlier. I mean, there's very few players in history of the game like that. But we were fortunate, and it was built. You have to look at what you have. As a coach or manager, you don't necessarily build, especially in today's world or today's hockey or today's sports, what you wish you had, but what you have. And if you have a solid goalie, and then that's a good start. If you have a good, solid defenseman that will play, you know, 25 minutes, and you know exactly what he's going to give you, you start building around that. But to this idea where coaches, the teams hire coaches or managers, and they're going to build a team, it takes a very long time, and there's no time for that. You got to work with what you have. You have to identify the player's strengths and weaknesses and apply them or put them in a position that they succeed instead of just trying to bring your own ego, bring your own way into a new team. I think the greatness today is to bring a coach or manager who can work well with what they have, and then start slowly but surely changing or improving. But 23-year-old players are on 10-year contracts nowadays. Like, how much movement is there? The key is to get the most out of this 23, 25, 27-year-old player throughout his contract, not just the first 4 years. It's a lot more. I believe today's game or today's sports in general is a lot more work with players, not necessarily on their shot. They're all skilled. They're all in shape. But how they're gonna fit into the team's concept and what's expected of them every single day. And that's a little different work than it was way back then.
Um, After 1,000 games, players generally get a silver stick. Did you get a silver stick?
I don't remember.
And where are your Stanley Cup rings?
In a safe somewhere. Yeah. I don't have. I never had any anything hung on the walls and stuff. Actually, the only thing we had was a couple nice articles throughout, going back in the early '70s when I was born. My wife had it framed, just kind of a more things about our life, or who we were as people, or who we are as people, than necessarily as a for me as a hockey player. Because as I said, as long as it was, I played professionally for 21 years, 18 years in NHL. As long as it was, suddenly you're in your 50s. He's like, wow, that wasn't, it went by really fast. So you got to be a good human being the rest of your life.
Bobby, you played in Atlanta. There's talk that Atlanta wants another shot at the NHL. What do you think of that?
I think any city that wants a team will get it. I mean, we are up to 32 now, aren't we? So it's I'm just kidding, but I really don't. It was a great city. I think I found out the first day I got there that it was a group of owners that couldn't agree on anything. They owned the Hawks, the basketball team, and the hockey team, and it was really really mismanaged, unfortunately. But the people, we loved our time in Atlanta. It was good. I definitely, uh, I hope, I wish that the city got a better treatment from the hockey team than they did, or from the ownership group. It was it was too bad because it could have worked.
Bobby, if you were playing today, which team would be the toughest matchup for you?
You know what? Tougher they are, better it is. People ask me all the time, what was your toughest challenge? What was the hardest player to play against? I said, harder they were, or better they were, more fun it was for me, because it was very very easy to get inspired, motivated for games against the best players in the world, or best teams in the world. So of course, Florida had won twice in a row. So every time they would come to your building, or you go there, you wanna measure yourself against the best, and that was my kind of enjoyment. It's to not to just to rise up to the occasion. When you play the top team or the top rival, you want to be, the best. Well, you always want to be the best, but you want to really rise up, because it's when it matters. It matters.
How about a comment on the hockey media? You have any feelings about the way hockey media reacted when you were a player?
I really enjoy the hockey media. I'm not necessarily saying they were good, but I enjoyed or respected that they had a job to do. Like, I had a job to do. Their role was either criticize or question what we were doing. So this is how it went. When we lost, we didn't play well. There was a lot of conversation because there was a lot of things that didn't go well. When we won, we were doing exactly what we were supposed to. There was not much to be said, and they kind of sometimes didn't understand it. They're like, "Oh, you always when you win, you don't have anything to say." Yeah, because we did what we were supposed to. When you lose, you don't do well. You are, sliding on in the standings. There's so many things that you can talk about because we're not, including myself, not doing our job, or we're not doing it well enough. So that brings me to today's media, which is very disappointing because the whole media is controlled somehow, and they are so overly positive. It's like all you know is there's 32 teams who are amazing teams, and those 32 teams have 23 players on their roster who are absolutely amazing players, and it's constantly like these highlights, this and that. You're telling me that Columbus Blue Jackets, again, I need fact checkers, they made what, playoffs twice in their 20 years or 25 years? But they're always on the next step to a Stanley Cup. Or Nashville Predators. Nashville Predators was always like the team that was like, oh, it's amazing, successful franchise. And how can somebody tell me how many playoff series they won since 1998 or whatever they were? Like, that has nothing to do with it. I'm not talking about teams. I'm talking about media covering the game. Don't tell me that every single night for 82 nights, everybody's that good. Because when I look at some of the hockey websites, or I read articles, I'm like, who's not doing well, or who's not doing their job? What coach is, who's going to question the coach why he played these players or that player? Or what about the goaltender? Like, none of that. That's why I'm like, nah, it's I don't think they're doing their jobs because they're not courageous enough. A lot of them.
So, Bobby, I'm the Leafs fan. The Leafs are struggling with consistency. In your opinion, what's missing from their team identity?
The Leaves, Stan, you'll appreciate it. After I listened to the podcast when you had Mark Nussbaum on, I got on the phone and I gave him a hard time because he was telling us, oh, about Blue Jays. I'm gonna retract a little bit. He was telling us how Blue Jays had the best analytics and the statistics in the World Series, but lost. It's all these fans commenting on their game. You talk about the Leafs. Again, everybody's great. The Leafs are the best. Blah 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 blah. There's no leadership until Austin Matthews says, "I don't need to score 65 goals a year. I want to score 35 and 40, but I'll make my right wing and left wing being able to compete at the highest level." It's not going to change until those players will sacrifice themselves. He's got all the statistics in the world. He's got all the money in the world. Like, he's not going to get any better. Maybe he will, but who cares? Like, he's got the contract. He's got the statistic. He doesn't have the rings or credibility or respect. So if that's how he wants to be, please be like that. But to me, or the the players I played with, that was not good enough. We wanted respect, we wanted the credibility, and we wanted to be champions. And for most of us, whether it's Marty, whether it's Scotty Stevens, Scotty Nevada, there's three Hall of Famers, Claude Lemieux, who should be a Hall of Fame, we all gave something to the team that took away from us, but added to the team. And that's how you got to change. You got to change. Everybody talks about culture. You don't need to change culture in Toronto. You just need to change mindset of two or three players. The
Do you
league is
think
not. They're not that far away, but they're also very far away because their mindset is, oh, I need to score all the goals so we are good. No, they need to call up a player from American Hockey League and put him on Austin Matthews left wing and play against the top players in the National Hockey League. So the left wing from the original first line can play on the second line or third line, so they have depth. It's that simple. But again, it takes courage to no, it takes wisdom and experience and articulation to explain to these players that they need to give up some of their themselves for the team, and which means dropping from 60 goals to 40 or 42 or 35, but making the team better. That's what matters.
do you think Baruby should be fired?
I really don't follow the leagues because I don't have to follow the leagues because I have too many Leafs fans who I talk to regularly. So, I'll call around and see what they think about firing Verby. I think if he tried to do what I just was talking about to make his top players better team players and it didn't work, then they need a change. But I don't know. I'm not sure if they tried it. They should ask Austin Matthews what he thinks about his abilities to make the team better. Again, we go back to media. Nobody's going to ask that because they want to be on his favorite side. Because if they want to quote, they want to be, they don't want to upset star players.
I'll tell you a short story about how close you and I got to meeting. Um, Back in the day, I was playing hockey, and it was a Saturday morning group, and the group wasn't that great, so I was kind of stoning them, and they managed to get one by me, and I turned around to pull the puck out of the net, and Robbie Fatorik was standing there with a bunch of players. I recognized Brendan Morrison and a couple others, and I just well, Fatorik was wearing a bright yellow sweater, and so anyway.
Was that at South Mountain?
No, it was at 8 Rinks in Burnaby in
Oh, okay.
Vancouver. So
Oh,
anyway, we finished the game, and it was shortly thereafter that Robbie Fatorik got fired, right 3 weeks before the end of the season. What did the players think about that move?
so I'll tell you, wasn't they? We were. I'll tell you what. That practice after you guys got off the ice and we went on the ice, he backskated us, and I hurt my back because it was like February in 1998, late in the season. I was playing a lot of hockey, and we all got backskated by Robbie. And I remember I pulled something in my back. I feel it to this day. I always tell people the story. like when they see me walking or getting out of a chair or a car, they're like, "What's wrong?" I said, "Long story, but it was a back skate in Vancouver in February 1998." Um, the younger players like Patrick Elias, Morrison, Sikora, they loved him because they had him part time in well, not part time, but the year or two that they were they in Albany at the time, in the minors. And he was a great teacher. Robbie was a great teacher, but it transitioned from great teaching to great coaching, meaning managing the team that you have and future Hall of Famers. That's two different things. So I always admire Robbie as a teacher, but then you have 27-year-old Holik, 32-year-old Andrew Chuck, 30-year-old Stevens. We've gone through certain things. So it's not exactly just teaching. Teaching is for the young. Of course, we always learn, but the approach has to be a little different. And I think Robbie didn't make the transition from teacher to a coach to managing players.
Bobby, before I close with my joke, a very serious question. Don't laugh, I didn't tell the joke yet.
I'm not laughing. I'm just getting ready.
No, I'm being serious now. I'm serious now. No kidding around. Why isn't Patrick Elias in the Hockey Hall of Fame?
Well, Hockey Hall of Fame, there's a lot of players I don't think should be there. To me, Hall of Fame means tremendous difference maker. And what it's, I don't think Patrick, to be honest with you, I admire Patrick tremendously because he came from a very small town, not far from where I grew up, and he really made it big. And the way he skated, how hard he worked, it was, he was much younger than I was, but he was still. You look at him like, man, this kid works. It was a pleasure playing with him, but you still need a little more than just good stats and good effort. You need this aura to be a Hall of Fame, in my opinion. You probably didn't know that, but I'm not on Hall of Fame selection committee. But if I was, there would be a lot of players of last probably 10, 15 years that they wouldn't be on it. Because to me, Hall of Fame is very, very special. And I don't think we have that many very, very special players. I'm not saying they're not great, but Hall of Fame, being great and Hall of Fame is two different things. I believe Claude Lemieux should be in the Hall of Fame because he was very, very special. And you know that, Stan, in many different ways.
So this kid, Benny, 6 years, he hasn't said a word. And for his 7th birthday, his mother is making him a cup of cocoa. He hasn't talked a word for 6 years, and he's having cocoa for his birthday. And all of a sudden he says, "This stuff is terrible." And the parents can't believe it. Benny, you didn't say a word for 6 years, and now for your 7th birthday, you're saying this is terrible. How come you started talking? He says, "Up until now, everything was great."
You know what? That reminds me, similar situation. I was very, very quiet coming into the league because I always thought that is great joke, but also real life thing. Because you reach certain point, maybe not at 7. I did it at 24 after winning the first cup and playing a fairly significant role on the crash line, where you're like, I've arrived. Benny shouldn't be changing at 7. Okay, I understand that, but there's certain point in your life or in your career where you feel like you've arrived because you deserve the spot there, but then you have to earn it every day after that. But I get it, Stan. I get it. It's really good.
This is historic. This is the first time anybody ever ad-libbed that joke.
Well,
okay, so here's the encore. 2 goldfish are swimming around in the little goldfish bowl, and one says to the other, he says, "Charlie, do you believe in God?" And the other goldfish says, "Yeah, I do believe in God." And the first one says, "Charlie, why do you believe in God?" And the other one says, "Well, who else is cleaning our fishbowl?"
Yeah. You know what? Good thing that I don't have the jokes that you send me via email here ready because they would be allowed anyways.
Well, Bobby, it's been great to see you and have you. Love you.
Thank you. Love you too.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bobby, thank you so much for joining us, for your honesty, and for giving fans a perspective they rarely get to hear. We really appreciate your time, and we hope to have you back again. And to everyone listening, thank you for tuning in to Bottle Rocket. We'll see you next episode.
Thank you.